A video started circulating online showing a massive stone slab embedded in the cliffs of the Irish coast, appearing to slide open on its own. No visible mechanism, no crew, no explanation. Within days, the clip had exploded across social media, stitched into breathless videos claiming Irish archaeologists had finally cracked open a hidden chamber sealed for centuries, revealing human remains, strange carved symbols, and, according to one particularly wild claim, 7 towering figures frozen inside 60-million-year-old rock that vanished from a scan taken just days later. Some versions claimed an artificial intelligence system had translated ancient warnings, never meant for human eyes. It is a genuinely terrifying story. There's just one problem. None of it happened. Not the door, not the chamber, not the vanishing figures, not the AI translation. The entire thing was fabricated from start to finish, generated and stitched together by channels that openly specialize in exactly this kind of manufactured content, built around a real, famous, genuinely spectacular location that never needed a single word of embellishment to begin with. Stick around, because unpacking how a fake stone door convinced millions of people something ancient and sinister had just been uncovered in Ireland is, in its own way, a more interesting story than the fictional one being sold to you, and once you understand it, you will be able to spot this exact playbook the next time it shows up in your feed. The location at the center of all this manufactured drama is real, and it is spectacular. It is called the Giant's Causeway, a stretch of roughly 40,000 interlocking stone columns jutting out along the coast of County Antrim in Northern Ireland, rising out of the sea like a staircase built for something far larger than a human being. The columns are so strikingly geometric, so close to perfectly hexagonal, that the very first Europeans to formally document the site back in 1693 struggled to believe nature alone could have produced something looking this deliberate, this engineered. Today, it stands as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most visited natural landmarks in all of Ireland, and it has been formally recognized by the Internationals, Ultimate Union of Geological Sciences, as one of just 100 official geological heritage sites anywhere on the planet, specifically because of the crucial role this exact location played in shaping the modern scientific understanding of volcanic rock formation. The real explanation behind the Giant's Causeway is, on its own, a genuinely wild story, even without any manufactured chambers or vanishing stone figures attached. Add to it. Somewhere between 50 and 60 million years ago, during the geological period known as the Paleocene epoch, the entire region sat at the center of one of the most intense volcanic zones on Earth, part of a vast, eruptive province connected to the early opening of the North Atlantic Ocean, back when Ireland, Scotland, and even Greenland were still joined together far more closely than they are today. Massive eruptions repeatedly flooded the landscape with molten basalt, thick, fast-moving lava that spread out and pooled across the terrain in layer after layer. As each successive layer of lava cooled, it contracted, and that contraction created stress fractures, spreading systematically through the rock. Basalt, it turns out, tends to crack in a remarkably specific, mathematically efficient pattern under exactly these cooling conditions, producing polygonal columns, most commonly with 6 sides, because a hexagon happens to be the most efficient shape for evenly distributing contraction stress across the surface. The same underlying geometric principle that shows up in honeycomb structures and dried mud cracks, just executed here on a monumental, awe-inspiring scale. Millions of years of subsequent erosion gradually stripped away the softer surrounding material, exposing the columns we see today, jutting dramatically, out of the cliffs and marching down into the sea. Long before anyone understood the geology, though, local tradition had already supplied its own explanation, and it remains one of the most beloved stories in all of Irish folklore. According to legend, the causeway was built by Fionn mac Cumhaill, known in English as Finn McCool, a legendary warrior hero from the ancient Fenian cycle of Gaelic mythology, celebrated for his great size and supernatural strength. The story goes that Fionn constructed a stone bridge stretching across the sea specifically to reach Scotland and confront a rival giant named Benandonnair. When Fionn finally caught sight of his opponent, he realized, in something of a comedic twist, that Benandonnair was considerably larger than he had anticipated. In the most commonly told version of the Tal E, Fionn's clever wife, sometimes named Una, disguised her husband as an enormous baby, wrapping him up and placing him in a makeshift cradle. When Benandonnair arrived at the shore and caught sight of the supposed infant, he immediately assumed that any father capable of producing a baby that size must be truly monstrous, and fled back to Scotland in terror, tearing up the stone bridge behind him as he ran, to make certain Fionn could never follow. What remains today, according to the legend, are the shattered fragments of that bridge, still visible on both the Irish and Scottish coastlines, since a matching formation of similar basalt columns, known as Fingal's Cave, actually does exist across the water on the Scottish island of Staffa. giving the old story an oddly satisfying geological echo across 2 different countries. None of that is secret. None of it is hidden. It has been documented, studied, and openly celebrated for centuries, appearing in tourist guides, school textbooks, and peer-reviewed geological papers alike. Which makes it worth asking directly, why would anyone need to invent a fictional stone door, a fictional hidden chamber, and fictional vanishing stone e-giants, layered on top of a site already this genuinely remarkable? The honest answer says less about the Giant's Causeway itself and more about how a very specific, increasingly common corner of the internet currently operates. Over the past couple of years, a distinct and rapidly growing genre of online content has emerged, built almost entirely around fabricated archaeological discoveries. The pattern repeats itself with remarkable consistency across countless different videos and posts, whether the supposed subject is an ancient Irish coastline, a South American, an Egyptian tomb, or, as one previous investigation covered, an obscure biblical manuscript. Step 1. Borrow a real, visually striking, well-known location, since audiences are naturally more inclined to trust and share something built around a place they can independently verify actually exists. Step 2. Layer on a completely fabricated central claim, something dramatic and specific enough to feel almost credible, a hidden chamber, a moving door, a set of ancient figures caught on a scan. Step 3. Invoke a currently trending piece of technology, very often, specifically naming a well-known artificial intelligence system to lend the fabricated claim an artificial sense of modern scientific legitimacy, since audiences today are primed to associate advanced AI systems with genuine cutting-edge discovery. Step 4. Present the entire fabricated narrative using the exact stylistic conventions of legitimate science journalism, calm narration, dramatic pacing, ominous background music, and confident, authoritative-sounding claims about supposed experts and supposed scans, specifically because those conventions are what audiences have learned over years of watching genuine documentaries to associate with trustworthy, factual reporting. Discussion threads. Investigating this exact Giant's Causeway video eventually traced it back to a channel identified by researchers and fellow forum users as one that openly and repeatedly produces artificial intelligence-generated video content built around entirely invented, sensationalized headlines, a practice that has become disturbingly easy and disturbingly cheap to produce at scale using current generative video and narration tools. What makes this particular genre so effective and honestly so difficult to combat is that it deliberately blurs the line between clearly labeled fiction, which is perfectly legitimate as entertainment, and content presented with the full visual and narrative authority of a genuine news report, without any kind of disclosure, making that distinction clear to casual viewers, scrolling quickly through their feed late at night. There is a real, well-documented cost to this kind of content beyond simply wasting a viewer's few minutes of attention. Genuine archaeological and historical research is often slow, incremental, and admittedly less immediately thrilling than a story about vanishing stone giants. Real excavations take months or years. Real geological surveys produce technical papers. Not dramatic countdown reveals building toward a shocking twist. When fabricated content consistently outperforms accurate, carefully sourced content in terms of views, shares, and engagement, it does not just spread one specific false claim about one specific Irish cliff face. It gradually erodes public trust in legitimate archaeological and scientific reporting more broadly, training audiences to expect every real discovery to arrive wrapped in exactly the same manufactured cinematic drama, and leaving them primed to dismiss genuinely careful, accurate science communication as somehow less exciting, less worthy of their attention, simply because it refuses to claim something impossible actually happened. There is also something worth noting about how remarkably specific and internally consistent this particular fabricated narrative was, because that specificity is actually part what made it spread so effectively. The claim was not a vague, generic assertion that something mysterious existed at the Giant's Causeway. It was built around precise, almost technical-sounding details. A drone capturing the exact moment a door supposedly slid open. 7 figures standing over 7 feet tall, arranged in formation, a specific claim. About a second scan conducted exactly 4 days later, revealing 1 figure missing. Details like these function almost like a magic trick, giving a fabricated story the texture and specificity that genuine reporting usually carries, since real discoveries tend to include exact numbers, exact dates, and exact measurements. Manufactured content has learned to mimic that texture convincingly, borrowing the surface-level structure of legitimate scientific reporting while filling it with content that has no underlying source at all. It is worth remembering that specificity alone is never actually evidence of truth. A claim can be extremely precise and still be entirely invented, and increasingly, that is exactly the kind of claim spreading fastest across social platforms right now. It also helps to understand exactly why the Giant's Causeway in particular became such an attractive target for this kind of fabricated content in the first place, beyond simply being visually striking. The site already carries a built-in reputation for feeling almost too deliberate to be entirely natural, a reputation stretching back over 3 centuries to those very first 17th century observers who genuinely struggled to accept that ordinary geological processes could produce something looking this geometric and intentional. That pre-existing sense of wonder, of a landscape that already feels slightly uncanny even when you know exactly how it formed, makes it an unusually easy setting in which to plant an entirely fictional twist. Audiences arrive already primed to find the location mysterious, which makes them considerably more receptive to an invented claim suggesting something even stranger might be hiding just beneath the surface. Manufactured content creators understand this dynamic well, and they deliberately seek out real locations that already carry some baseline sense of awe or unease, since fabricating a shocking discovery at an already unremarkable location tends to generate far less traction than layering that same fabrication on top of somewhere audiences already find genuinely captivating. This entire episode also fits into a much larger and increasingly urgent conversation happening right now about the sheer scale at which artificial intelligence tools have made this kind of fabrication possible. Producing a convincing video like this once required significant time, technical skill, and resources, meaningful barriers that naturally limited how much fabricated content could realistically flood the internet at any given moment. Today, generative video tools, AI narration systems capable of producing convincingly natural-sounding voiceovers, and automated script-writing assistants have collectively collapsed nearly all of those barriers at once. A single creator, working alone, can now produce dozens of polished, cinematic-sounding fabricated documentaries in the time it once took to produce just one, and can do so across an enormous range of unrelated topics simultaneously, from ancient Irish coastlines to lost biblical manuscripts to supposedly leaked government documents, all using largely the same underlying production template. Researchers and journalists studying the broader online misinformation landscape have specifically flagged this exact category, fabricated archaeological and historical discovery content, as one of the fastest growing segments of AI-generated misinformation currently circulating, precisely because history and archaeology already carry built-in public fascination, while simultaneously remaining specialized enough that most casual viewers have no easy, quick way to independently verify a specific claim on the spot. There is a reasonable question worth sitting with here too, about what responsibility, if any, falls on platforms hosting this kind of content in the first place. Most major video platforms do technically have policies addressing manipulated or synthetic media, but enforcement remains notoriously inconsistent, particularly for content that does not explicitly claim to depict a real, identifiable living person, which is the specifies C category most existing synthetic media policies were originally designed to address. A fabricated documentary about an ancient stone door often does not clearly violate the letter of most existing platform policies at all, even though it functions, in practice, almost identically to other categories of misinformation those same policies were specifically created to prevent. That regulatory and enforcement gap is a significant part of why this particular genre, OF content, has been allowed to proliferate as quickly and as extensively as it has over just the past couple of years, essentially operating in a gray area that existing moderation systems were never really built to catch. None of this is meant to suggest that every piece of speculative or dramatized historical content online is automatically some kind of malicious hoax. There is a long, entirely legitimate tradition of speculative documentaries, historical dramatizations, and clearly labeled fictional storytelling built around real historical settings. And plenty of creators handle that kind of content responsibly, with clear disclaimers, making the fictional or speculative nature of their work obvious to any viewer. The genuine problem lies specifically with content that deliberately withholds that distinction, presenting fabricated claims using the full visual and tonal grammar of legitimate factual reporting, with no disclosure anywhere in the video itself indicating that what a viewer is watching is not actually real. That specific, deliberate blurring of the line between fiction and fact, rather than dramatization itself, is really the core of the problem. For anyone who wants to get better at spotting this kind of content before sharing it further, there are a few consistently reliable warning signs worth keeping in mind. Extremely dramatic, superlative heavy titles, using words like terrifying, shocking, or disturbing paired with vague, unnamed authority figures, like scientists or archaeologists rather than specific, named researchers or institutions, are one of the most common and consistent red flags. A genuine absence of any linkable source, official statement, or established news coverage, especially for a claim this dramatic, involving a site as heavily monitored and actively studied as somewhere like the Giant's Causeway, is another. And perhaps most tellingly, any claim explicitly built around a named, currently trending artificial intelligence system supposedly uncovering some previously hidden secret without any accompanying explanation of what specific data that system was actually given to analyze in the first place, should immediately raise serious suspicion, since legitimate AI-assisted research is always described alongside the actual underlying dataset or methodology it was applied to, not presented, as some kind of independent mystical revelation machine capable of divining secrets from thin air. It is also worth pointing out how easy this specific hoax actually was to identify and dismantle once someone bothered to actually check. There is no credible archaeological excavation report describing a sealed stone door or a hidden chamber anywhere at the Giant's Causeway. The site sits under the active stewardship of the National Trust, a well-established British heritage organization responsible for its ongoing preservation and research, and any genuine discovery of this magnitude at 10F, the most heavily monitored, most thoroughly studied geological sites in the world, would have been documented immediately, covered extensively by established outlets like the BBC, and confirmed through the site's own official channels, rather than surfacing first through an anonymously produced video with no named excavation team, no cited academic institution, and no verifiable source of any kind. The complete absence of any of that basic verifiable infrastructure, the exact infrastructure that accompanies every genuine archaeological announcement, is itself one of the clearest possible signals that a claim like this was never real to begin with. So, what should someone genuinely interested in ancient mysteries and archaeological discovery actually take away from all of this? For one, a healthy, practical skepticism toward any viral claim invoking a named, currently trending piece of artificial intelligence technology as the supposed source of some previously undiscovered ancient secret. Real archaeological and genetic research absolutely does use cutting-edge technology today: ancient DNA sequencing, ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR laser, scanning capable of revealing entire buried settlements hidden beneath dense jungle canopy. But that legitimate research is published in peer-reviewed academic journals, cited by name, attached to specific universities and research institutions, and covered by established news organizations with editorial standards, and a reputation actually at stake if they get the story wrong. Claims arriving instead through an anonymous video with dramatic narration, ominous music, and absolutely no verifiable source anywhere in sight deserve exactly the same skepticism you would apply to any other unverified claim. Circulating on the internet, regardless of how convincingly cinematic the presentation happens to be, the genuinely good news buried in all of this is that the real version of this story remains completely fascinating entirely on its own merits, without requiring a single invented detail. A landscape formed by one of the most violent and geologically significant volcanic episodes in Earth's relatively recent history, so strikingly, improbably geometric that it fooled 17th century naturalists into doubting nature could possibly be responsible, paired with a genuinely charming piece of ancient Irish mythology, explaining that same landscape through the story of a clever giant and his even cleverer wife, outwitting a much larger rival. That is already a remarkable story. It does not need a fictional stone door, a fabricated hidden chamber, or an invented AI-powered translation of some imaginary ancient warning to hold anyone's attention. If you appreciate content that separates real, well-documented history and science from the increasingly convincing manufactured content flooding social media right now, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because there's a lot more of this kind of debunking and deep diving still to come. The next time a video claiming some artificial intelligence system just uncovered a shocking secret hidden inside an ancient site crosses your feed, take 30 seconds before sharing it and ask some simple questions. Is there a named research team attached to this claim? Is there a university or an established, reputable news organization actually reporting on it independently? Does an official source connected to the actual site itself, whether that is a heritage body, a government agency, or a recognized scientific institution, confirm any part of the story at all? More often than not these days, the honest answer turns out to be no, and that gap is precisely where this entire manufactured genre of content quietly thrives. If topics like this interest you, stories about real ancient wonders and the manufactured myths increasingly built up around them, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because there's plenty more genuine mystery out there, and it rarely needs any embellishment at all to be worth your time.